Hope this lighting is okay. It's really awkward to talk to a camera. I don't know how the other YouTubers do it. It takes time to get used to. Definitely does. So, hello. My name is Ella. Thank you for joining me today. For today's video, I thought I would talk about altars. It's another Wicca 101 video for beginner Wiccans, and yeah, if you're just starting out. I do have my notes on my phone, so I'll sometimes look down just in case so I don't miss anything. So to start out with what an altar is basically a sacred space for you as a Wiccan or a witch. It's where you can conduct your rituals, it's where you may or may not choose to meditate, it's where you feel comfortable to practice your craft. Basically, it's your sacred space. So then it depends on what kind of Wiccan you are, what path you have chosen for yourself, and that will kind of guide you to what altar you will probably most likely have. And again, it depends completely on you. Some Wiccans will only have one altar, maybe some Wiccans will have several altars for different kind of things. It's really up to you, as most of Wicca is very much up to you and your personal path. Just for the sake of this video, I'll be going over the more traditional altar as a basis, so that you can then build on that basis and change it up, or you can also keep a more traditional altar. That's up to you. So a quick disclaimer, of course there are many different ways to set up an altar. I will go off on the most basic setups that you would find. So another disclaimer for the tools, you really don't need to go out and buy all of these tools and spend a lot of money on these. It's really not about that. It's not about how fancy your tools are. If you want fancy tools, go get yourself some fancy tools. But personally, I have collected my tools over several years from either people gifting them to me. My grandmother gave me a couple of my tools actually. You buy them in, you know, flea markets, for example. So it doesn't have to be fancy and expensive. The one thing with tools is that you really have to make sure that you keep those tools only for your altar and for your craft work. So you don't use a butter knife as your athame and then go back to using it as a butter knife afterwards. They have to be somewhat sacred, and you have to keep them with purpose so that your tools know what they're used for. We are starting with candles. The basic altar would have two candles, one representing the god and one the goddess. The color is up to you, or which deities you choose to work with. I'll be making a video on that later actually. Now with candles, of course, you have to be a little bit careful. You might not be able to burn things in your room or in your dorm or whatever, outside in nature as well. You can also use the little LED candles, or just have a candle as symbolism. You don't need to light the candle to still have the fiery energy. Then you can have statues. This is a bit more optional, but many traditional altars will have a god and a goddess statue on their altar as well. I actually only have a little Buddha statue because I like to incorporate some of the principles into my craft. Then you have a chalice. A chalice can be either a cup or a proper chalice, which actually represents the feminine, and this is really just a ritual tool to use for symbolism or for drinking wine or grape juice during your ritual. We're moving on to the athame. The athame is the counterpart of the chalice and is a ritual knife. It represents the male and is also used only for symbolism and sometimes for drawing your circle. It is absolutely never used for cutting or carving, and it should never ever touch blood. The more traditional use for the athame is for casting the circle, for male symbolism, and you would have a bowline or bowline to cut and carve herbs, for example, right, or candles. Then you have the wand. This is often a substitute for the athame, as not everyone wants to have a knife on their altar, or the parents just don't allow you to have a knife on your altar, which is absolutely understandable. So this is also, or can also be used for the male symbolism to cast your circle, or direct energy. So you can either make one yourself, or you can also buy it in a store. Then you would have an incense burner. Of course, this is very straightforward. This also symbolizes the element air, and incense is often used to cleanse your tools and your crystals and your sacred space in general. The The traditional altar also has a bowl of salt and a bowl of water to represent earth and water respectively. Then you would have a bell. A bell is often included and used to start and end a ritual and is symbolic to calling the deities or elements. As you can see, I don't actually have or own a bell. I just never got to buying one, collecting one. I don't know, it's just, but some do like to use a bell. Then you would have a pentacle. A pentacle is often the center of your altar and can be made out of natural elements such as seashells, flowers, crystals, stones, or it can be an actual pentacle as it is with me. Then you would have an offering. So most altars have an offering, either for your deities or, for example, ancestors or energies that you like to work with. I had a offering for my pets who passed away, and usually with an offering, after a couple of, you know, maybe a day or two, you would bring the offering to a natural area, you know, for example your garden. You could bury the offering and just replace it with a new one, for example, a fresh one. With ancestors, it is very common to place their favorite food on the altar, or their favorite alcohol or drink or whatever. And then last but not least, I wanted to include crystals, just out of personal love for crystals, I guess you can say. So I thought I would include them. Altars are not necessarily have to include crystals. The lighting is still fine. My camera died and I should really check the battery before I start filming. But it was at the end of the video already anyway. We've gone through everything, and I think that's already it for the video for your altar, how to set it up. Now, a little note, of course not everyone is open to have an altar. You might be in a dorm room, or you might share your room with a sibling. Your parents might just not know about you being a Wiccan or interested in Wicca yet, or they just don't agree with that belief. So you can actually have a hidden altar as well, for example in a little box, like a shoe box for example, that you can hide in your closet or under your bed, or you can even have an altar outside in nature. The main thing with an altar is that you incorporate the elements and that you incorporate whatever deities, gods or energies that you choose to work with. It's just really supposed to be a sacred space. You are absolutely free to add or not add whatever you like or dislike to your altar. It is yours. No one can tell you you need to have this if you are a Wiccan. Like, no, you do you. Whatever suits you is going to work best for you and your craft and your practice. Now, one other note about altars is that with the last 2-3 years, I've seen more and more altars on Instagram, which is very curious to me, because personally I like to keep my altar off Instagram and social media and everything, because it's very personal and very private for me. So if you want to share your altar, that is absolutely up to you. That's absolutely fine. But a lot of Wiccans will keep the altar to themselves and not let other people touch it or see it. Especially touching your altar can be tricky, because they might transfer some of their energies onto your altar, onto your tools. You might not want that. So if someone does touch your altar, feel free to just cleanse it. And also, one more thing is, your altar is a sacred space. So don't put napkins and tissues and dirty plates and your phone on your altar. It shouldn't be dirtied, is that a word, with napkins and your dirty dishes that you have not brought to the kitchen yet. So I am going to finish this video for today. If you have any questions, again, you can leave them down below. Thank you, blessed be, and see you next time.